Hi, welcome to this Tech Tuesday. We're talking about gamification today. And gamification is the application of game elements to non-gaming contexts. So what we're talking about is gamifying your class to try to engage learners in a new and different way. So gamification in Moodle, gamification itself is one of the most effective ways to engage and motivate learners using game mechanics and games themselves. So the difference between those two is game mechanics are tactics used to try to get students to compete and ignite their desire to win and their desire to beat each other, which is an amazing thing in itself that when I started gamifying my class, I did not anticipate how much students would go to try to be ahead of each other in a competition that I just didn't expect, especially at the high school level. Games themselves are tangible games. There are a number of games incorporated in Moodle that you can use, and we'll talk about those at the end. Because really, when I talk about gamification, when I'm talking about doing it, I'm talking about changing the way you present your class and the way you motivate your learners, which is really mainly about game mechanics, although those games are there as well. One of the first things you have to do to change the thought process and the mechanics of your class is that change the way you talk about your class. You're trying to get away from homework, assignments, tests, and things that are only talking about points and grades and talking about things that are about really getting points and levels and badges and rewards in your class and in a new way to try to get them to look at how you're rewarding them in your class. So these are some different terms I've got on the slide right now, talking about quests versus quizzes, versus assignments, challenges versus quizzes. Now it's still going to be a quiz. You're still going to use the quiz module, which you're not going to call the Chapter 4 quiz. You're going to call it the biology challenge number 4 or whatever. But you're going to refer to these things differently. Instead of talking about grades, you're talking about points that you use to level up and earn rewards. You're also going to talk about badges, which is one of the simplest and easiest way to start gamifying your class. And along with all those things, there's a level of social recognition, leaderboards, and rewarding students for their motivation and their engagement. I lost that word. Engagement in your Moodle class. So you're going to have leaderboards that talk about that. Now, before we get too far into it, I want to say you're still going to give them grades. They're still going to get an A or a B or a C in your class. They're still going to get a report card. Those students that are motivated by grades, that want to get a 95% in your class, are still going to be motivated by grades. They're still going to see their grade report. They're still going to see their grade when they log into Moodle. You're going to have some new ways to reward students that aren't based solely on grades. And that's really what gamification is about. So Moodle badges are one of the simplest methods and the easiest ways to get into gamification themselves. They're created by you and assigned for doing specific things in Moodle. And really it can be anything they do in Moodle, from clicking on a link, viewing things, completing things. You can do it based on passing a challenge. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about grades. When I make badges relative to grades, many times people think, well, you just combine the two. Yeah and no, because usually these are based on formative items that they can do over and over again, just like in a game. When they're playing Halo or Minecraft or any game that they play, they die and fail many, many times. But that failure doesn't make them stop playing the game. They learned on why they died or why they failed, and they apply that to the next time they come in and try the game. Somebody who plays Minecraft or Halo dies thousands of times, but that first failure, that first death, doesn't mean a thing to them because they know they can come in and try it again. So usually when we're talking about these challenges or quizzes, they're formative in nature. redoable as many times as you want to allow them, and it can be unlimited in Moodle, um, so that they know that they can fail, they can learn from that failure, they can try to do it again until they can succeed and move on. So it might be they have to do this challenge until they can pass it, and then when they pass it, the next thing happens, and that's more of the advanced stage of gamification, and we're going to get there today as well. But basically, for a badge, you can award it for anything that you want to do in Moodle. So how do we do that? First of all, we have to go through our course and decide what items we want to be able to track. So in order to get a badge or assign a badge, you have to say they've completed these things to get this badge. And like I said, you can track it for viewing, completing, submitting, passing, and we'll go through some of those things with completion tracking, which was the subject of an entire different Tech Tuesday, but we're going to look at those today and how it applies to badges themselves. So we're going to open up this example course. Okay, so for the purpose of this discussion, I have used somebody else's course and made a copy of it, just so I know I've got one that doesn't have these things turned on. So the first thing we have to do is to enable ourselves to track. So in the course, I'm going to go to Edit Settings, and I'm going to go down to where it says completion tracking, and I'm going to turn that from no to yes. If I can't track completion, I can't give badges, so I have to turn that on. So that's the first thing. Now I need to decide what things I want to use. So I'm going to make a badge based on this first section on historical thinking and enlightenment. So I'm going to go to this section, and I'm going to turn editing on, and I'm going to just turn on a couple things that are in this section that I want to make sure that they've looked at. So I'm going to say they have to have watched these first 3 PowerPoints or viewed these first 3 PowerPoints in order to get the first badge. So I'm going to go ahead and click the edit button, and down here under activity completion, when I turn it on, it defaults to do not indicate completion, and I have 2 choices. Students can manually mark it as completed or show it as complete when some condition is met. If I say students mark it as completed, I'm going to go back to the course, it has this solid checkbox here, and the students then would just be able to click on it, and when they do, they're saying that thing is completed. The other option is, when I go to activity completion, is to say it's complete when some condition is met, and the only condition that can be met on a resource that students click on is students must view this activity to complete it. So I check that and I say return to course, and now you can see it's got dashes around it, which means that there is something that has to happen for this to be completed automatically, and in this case it is simply clicking on the resource and opening it. One of the other things that happens as I add these to the list of tracked activities is that there's a report here called activity completion, and when I go there, all the things will start to show up with check marks next to the ones that students have done. So right now there's only that one thing. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to track this one as well, go down to activity completion, and I'm going to do the same thing. Student must view it. And I'm going to go down to the third one down here and do the same thing. And I'm saying they have to at least, oops, wrong one. They have to at least reference these PowerPoints because that's part of my assignment. Now those are obviously non-graded things, and so right now I'm saying that maybe I make a badge just based on the participation of my students. That if you've gone and done all the things I wanted you to do, maybe one of them in the beginning is referencing my course syllabus because I wanted everyone to make sure they've read the syllabus. So I'm going to make that at 1, 2. So now I'm tracking that you read my syllabus and that you went to these, because otherwise there's no way for us to easily know, right? I mean, we can go and do a Moodle report and go through all the logs we want to, and that's a humongous pain. This way, now under my reports and activity completion, those things are just going to show up, and I'll be able to pick a particular group, for instance, and be able to track who has and who has not done those things. Now, if I want all those things to get done, there's a way through the use of the badge to see who's done the things that I assigned them to do. So I'm going to make a badge now that the students are going to get to see. Now, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to add latest badges as a sidebar. Now, what that does is whenever a student gets a badge, they immediately see the badge that they got. So I'm going to drag this actually over here and put it right underneath their calendar so they can easily see it whenever they come on here. It's going to show the latest badge that they were awarded. And of course, there's no reason to do it if the students aren't even going to see that it's there. So now I'm going to go ahead and create a badge, and I go right here to add new badge, and I'm going to give it a name. Oh, I forgot what the section that we called. Thinking and Enlightenment badge. Thinking and then I can say I have to give a description to it. Something like that. Okay, now, one of the things we have to say, oh, by the way, if you don't see those, the stars mean they're required, so we have to give it a name, we have to give it description, and we have to give it an image. Now, I can use any image I want to on Google. I can download it, and I can throw it in here. It does say the maximum size is 256K. I'm going to Google the words thinking and enlightenment and see what comes up. So I went into and had thinking and enlightenment, and I came up with a bunch of different things here. And here's the thing, what a great badge. I don't want to do the picture. I want to right click and save this image right here now. So I'm going to save this image, and I'm going to save it to a new folder. I'm going to call it badges while I'm doing this little class here. Oh, and I called it index, which was a terrible name. But let's go ahead and open up that and see if I got what I think I got. And there's my badge. So I'm going to rename it Thinking. And if I want to see how big it is, I can go to View and Details, and I'm well under that size that I needed to be at by just downloading the icon from here. If I clicked on that and then I viewed the image itself, that's going to be much bigger. If I just stick with what the Google came up with for the initial image, those are going to be perfect size icons. So here I am back at my spot, and I'm just going to take that picture, I'm going to drag it right there, and now I've got that image that's going to be assigned. The rest of this, it's got my contact name in right here. You could put your own in for the default contact in there for the who gave it, and you might want to put that it's world history with, let's see if I can grab part of that there and not grab the whole thing. I just want to say world history. Who gave that badge. You can make them expire. I'm not going to make it expire. So I just created this badge. It's going to look like that. It's going to be called Thinking and Enlightenment. So now I've created the badge, and now I have to give it some criteria. How do you get it? Now, I can manually issue it. I can say you get it when the course is over. Don't know why you do that. Or I can do it based on activities, which is what we're looking at doing now. Now, I only have 4 activities in my course list because those are the only ones I've turned on. And I'm saying you have to do them all. So this criteria is complete when all of the selected activities, you could say just one of them. And you can give a description to this. I'm not going to put any other description in there. You can see it's not starred, so I don't have to. So now when they've done all of those things, they're automatically going to get that badge. So I'm going to hit save for that. So right now, overview of the badge. It's called Thinking and Engagement. There's the description of it. That's where I made it. That's the image they'll get. This is who they're getting it from, world history and my email address. And here's the criteria that are going to be issued with that. I can also have it do a message, which it's going to do this by default. So I just leave it the way it is. They're basically going to get a pop-up that says, congratulations, you just earned a badge. You have earned the badge, and it puts in the name Thinking and Enlightenment. And more information can be found about the badge Thinking and Enlightenment on the information page. So you don't have to do any of those other things. So I just looked at the overview. I'm good. I love this badge, is exactly what I want, and I have to then enable access to the badge. So the badge is not currently available. Enable access. If you want to earn this badge, click enable access. Are you sure it's going to be locked when you do that? Yes, I'm sure. So now the badge is available to users, and anyone that has done those things, which is going to be nobody because it wasn't activated before they did it, but now if they went and did those things, they would be able to automatically get issued that badge. So badges, you can see, are really easy to do. The steps there with the badges is just to throw these things out of my way, is to decide what you want to track and then make the badge itself. So I could go through the entire course if I wanted to at this point, turning on everything, or I could just make badges as I go by enabling those things. I'm coming up on doing these things, or when I enable this whole unit here, and make it so that they'll then be rewarded a badge for doing the things I have assigned. There's some double duty on that. Number one, how do we know everyone's gone to the links? Well, all I have to do now to see if everyone done those things is go to my badges right here and manage badges, and I will see who got it. So I'll be able to click on this and see the list of names, and I know those 20 people have done it, and I know all the other people haven't. So I can easily say, hey, if you haven't got the Thinking and Enlightenment badge, that means you haven't completed the material that you needed to do before the first quest, before the first whatever, wherever we're at in the course. You guys need to make sure you get those things completed and get your Thinking and Enlightenment badge issued to you. That's one thing. The other thing is I can go to this reports now, and I can go to this activity completion report, and now I'll be able to see, and I can drag it by course section, who's done those things in the course and what exactly is missing that they haven't gotten that particular thing done. So that's how badges work. It's pretty easy. It takes a little bit of adding those things to the tracking list, but in the end you can have all those things in there. One of the things you can also do with badges is you can issue them based on grades as well. So you can do it based on, hey, in order to get that badge, if there was a quiz here in the beginning, and I could easily go and add a quiz. Let me pause this so I can do that. Okay, so I've added a little break here, and I've added a quiz called Enlightenment Challenge. Now, this quiz is a formative quiz. It's only worth 10 points. But in the quiz itself, under the settings, you can say down here, for activity completion, show it when they got a passing grade. So they have to get a passing grade. Now, this has nothing to do with the grade A, B, C, D. It has everything to do with the grade that you said right here. So I said you need 9 points out of 10. You can do it as many times as you want, but you're always going to get the grade for your last attempt. I don't ever do highest attempt on that, because then they don't try as hard on the subsequent attempts if they know that they're always going to keep the 8 that they got. So I always say the last time you took it is the grade you get. That's personal preference. Unlimited time, but you have to have a 9 to pass. So I've added a new thing here. Now, if I want to make that part of the badge, of that badge, I can, but in order to do that, I'm going to hit the setting here to edit, and I can't just change the criteria unless I disable access. Then I can edit it and say, hey, you also have to have passed this quiz, which is called a challenge, nothing else. And then I can re-enable it. So I basically said that not only do you have to reference those things, you also have to pass this challenge. And on the sheet itself, when we look at Moodle, it doesn't say anything about a quiz. It's just enlightenment challenge. So you got to read that and that and that, and then you have to have passed this challenge that says you've got that much knowledge on the things that you just looked at. And obviously the kids are going to be able to do it, and it's only 5 questions, and if they take it enough times, boy, even if there's 4 multiple choice in each one, they're going to figure out what the right answer is. But it's formative, and that's the way gamification works. They can fail, they can try again until they pass it. And by taking that over and over again, they really know what the right answer is when they're done. It's not like they didn't learn something, all they did was learn what the answer was. Yes, but that is learning something. So that's how a badge works, and that's how you redo those badges. And obviously those are up completely to your own imagination on how you want to add and track and do badges. So that's badges. So we just went through and created some. The next level of gamification is to make things happen unexpectedly. The research shows that if students always expect something to happen and they know what's going to happen, it's not as obviously exciting to them when it happens. So one of the things you could do with your Moodle course is you have things happen just because something else happened, and they just kind of appear in the Moodle course, which means that when they start Moodle, maybe the only thing they see is one thing, and they did it, and all of a sudden something else shows up as soon as they finished it. And maybe something else shows up if they get a certain grade versus they get another grade, so you can make it defined by how they did on that other thing. And I'll show you how that works. So it really talks about having a minimalistic design in Moodle. You don't have this humongous list of stuff showing up. They start out with very little. Descriptions are more brief, and they figure it out as they go. It allows you to do some choice things in there, and obviously it allows for failures and retakes as well. So the way that works in Moodle is through the use of restricted access. Now we're going to use the exact same course, and I'm going to turn some things on for restricted access. So I'm going to say that you only get to see this if you've done this. So how do I do that? So in order to see this PowerPoint, you have to have looked at the introductory one first. So I'm going to turn editing on, and I'm going to go to the settings on this one. And instead of the activity completion, I'm going to go to restrict access, and I'm going to add a restriction. And I'm going to say you have to have completed the activity, and then I'm going to say you have to have looked at the thinking maps intro, and I'm going to hit the little eyeball, which means they don't even see that this one is there until they do the other one. And I'll show you the way that works. I'm going to uncheck it so you see what happens. Right now, if they came here, they're going to see it grayed out, and it's going to say not available unless Thinking Maps Intro is marked complete. So they can either click there, or if it's in another section, they can click there, and it'll take them to that other activity. And then, when that's complete, all of a sudden this isn't grayed out anymore. That's one way of doing it. The other way is on the restrict access, you just poke the eyeball. And now, in order to do that, they don't even see it. It says not available until this is complete, hidden otherwise. So they don't even know this exists. And obviously, it doesn't make sense to do that if everything else is visible. You're going to go through your section and do that to all of it, so things show up as they go. Okay? So I could do the same thing with this one, and this one maybe doesn't. I'm going to restrict the access and add a restriction. But on this one, I'm going to say they have to have done the syllabus. They don't see this unless they've done the syllabus. And maybe I hide it, maybe I don't. Okay? And you can add more restrictions. I can say that in order to do this, they have to have done the syllabus and they have to have done the Thinking Maps intro. So in this case, I can leave it just the way it is. They have to done all of them, or you could say any of them. As long as they did one thing, then they can get into that. So that's the nature of restrictions. I can make them all or any. And I'm going to click back here, and it says not available unless they've done this, or just like the other one, I can do, and I can poke them in the eye. And now it says hidden otherwise. Until they've done this, I'm sorry, this and this, they don't even see that that exists. So that's the way those works. I'm going to go ahead and move on, and I'm going to go down to the quiz. In order for you to see the challenge, I'm going to say you have to have done everything. So in other words, you have to have done the intro, you have to have done the thinking maps, you have to have done that, you have to have done, so you can see I'm adding all these things in order to see it. Now I'm not going to poke this in the eye because in this case I want them to know, even if those other things are hidden, that you have to have done all these other things in order to get to the challenge. So I've got all those things available now that I've got showing up, and I can even have so the entire next section doesn't show up until you've passed this one. So I'm going to do this information outline to show you what I mean. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to restrict access, and instead of adding the activity, I can add a grade. In other words, I can say that that challenge, enlightenment challenge, has to be between, must be greater than 50% in order to move on. That would be a silly number, wouldn't it? Let's say 80% in order to move on. If you haven't gotten at least a B in the class so far, you can't move on. You have to go back and retake that test in order to see the next thing that we're doing in the class. So that's one based on a grade on a previous activity. You can also do it so that, okay, you know what, this one is for students that are failing that. Maybe this is a review activity. I can do the same thing. I can say restrict access based on a grade, and this time the challenge must be less than 80%. So only students that aren't passing see this. The ones that went through and got a 90% don't even know that thing ever existed, because it's an intervention activity now that I'm having show up in there. So this is one of the things about gamifications. You can have things show up for success, you can have things show up for failure, but the idea of those things for failure is to get them back to the success track. So you can have things that show up and disappear as they're successfully going through the course, and thereby is the idea of gamification, that they're used to failing and trying again and succeeding, and that's the idea with gamification. So I'm going to go and add this one, return to the course. So now this one, you have to get, it says the appropriate score on the enlightenment challenge, and I can change that so it's hidden as well, so no one even knows that's there. Oh, I didn't click the right one. Right there we go. And on the restrict access, I can poke that in the eye. So unless you fall in that category of I didn't do well on the challenge, you won't even see the, and maybe I call this challenge 1 help, and I have some kind of additional reading or additional activity. And likewise, if I have games, and we're going to get to that later, if I have games available to my students, I can say you only get to see the game if you got a 90% or 100% on that other activity, so that they're getting a reward right away in Moodle. I did great, I got this, I get to play this game. And maybe you could set it up so it only plays for so long, because you can have it based on dates. It only happens till January 12th, and then the game goes away. So it's a reward, a conditional reward based on how they're engaged in their Moodle class, which is of course the idea of all this in the first place. So that's the idea of having failures and retakes, things appearing for both good and bad, and anything you want to that way. And you can do the same thing with allowing a choice. Hey, click here and you get some things show up. In other words, they'll click that they want to do module 2 first, and you have it based on if they clicked here, these things show up as well. So that's the next level of gamification. There's another whole thing that goes along with this, and that's really for engagement, and that's giving levels for students' progress in the course. And that kind of connects to games as well, that as they get better, they get promoted in many games to a new rank, or they move up to a new level, and those levels get them things or recognition among their peers. So the next thing we can do with gamification is to do levels. Now, that is a very specific add-on that's available here on the left-hand side called Level Up. So if I click on Level Up, I'm going to see the icon over here for leveling up. Now, by default, all you get is a star that says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's fine as you get started. And let me click on the settings here. The default settings are a place to start. Let me go through the different things here. So by default, they get experience points, and they go up through level 10 for getting this many points as they go. And they get those based on these rules right here, which are the default rules. And what does that mean? The rule is called CRUD. For creating something, they get 45 experience points. Creating is submitting a test, submitting an assignment. Any activity that they do that gets graded is a creation activity. They do a journal posting, they do a forum post, that gets them 45 points. Now, if you look at that 45 points, and you look over here at the rules, you see that they're going to get to level 2 very quickly. But as it grows up there, now all of a sudden I'm getting 1,000 points between levels. And here we're 700 points. You can see, so as it goes, it gets harder and harder to achieve the next level with the default rules. R is review. In other words, any link they touch is a review. Okay, so if they click on your web link and then they close it and click on it and close it and click on it and close it, they're going to get 9 points every single time they do that. And there's some things that we have to build in or we can change to make it so they don't just go click happy in your course trying to go up a level, which mine did as soon as I put that in there. All night long they did it. I couldn't believe how much time they spent trying to level up doing that, but I'll show you those rules. And then 3 points is to update something you've already done. I personally think that's kind of low. In other words, if they submit their PowerPoint and then they submit it again, that's an update, so they get 3 points for updating. They get no points, 0 points for deleting. These rules are just fine. You can leave them just the way they are. What isn't fine is it in the where's it at? Oh, right here in the settings. In the settings, we can set how often they can do things. So by default in the settings, they're allowed to gain experience points. Of course, why would we have it and say no? Can they see the informational page on what level's worth what? I say yes. Do they get a notification when they level up? Of course. Why else would we do it? Can they see the ladder? Yes. Can they see their identity, or do you want to hide their identity on the ladder? I don't know why you would do that, but you could. Display everyone, or only display the people that are closest to them in their rank. That's what that's for. So they could see up to 5 people around them. I leave it at display everyone so they can see each other's rank, although there is a reason you might want to say, you can only see the guy closest to you. But that's what that means by those neighbors. Do they want to see their ranking? Yes. Or do you want to just show the relative rank, how they are as opposed to the people around them? Now here's the cheat guard. Cheat guard says, and this is something you really, really want to think about, the maximum actions in a specific time frame. Now, the time frame is here, and I thought that meant 10 actions in 60 minutes. But if you put it on there, time frame is in seconds. Time frame in seconds. In other words, they could do 10 things a minute. Okay, that's crazy. What thing do you have that would allow that many things a minute? And I will tell you that in mine, I say 3 things max in 10 minutes. Because I want these points to be for actually doing something, not just click, 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 click. And then, how much time can be between the identical action? In other words, if they did the exact same thing, When do they get it again? Well, that's 3 minutes, so they could just keep doing the same thing. I don't like that at all. I'm putting it pretty darn high. If you want to do the calculation on that, you can divide 60 by 60. Doesn't matter. I just threw up a big, huge number. So that basically, and here's how calculator. And this might be a good relative one. Say in 6 hours, that's 21,000. So they can't do the thing more than every 6 hours if I do this number right there. Okay, and you can keep logs to see what they're doing if you want to. It's defaults to 3 days. You might want to set it up to a month, and I'm going to save the changes so that I can then later on go through the log and see what my kids are doing. So that's what the settings for, and I highly recommend changing those settings. The info, let's see the ladder. You can change what the ladder is over here in the levels page. There we go. So I'm going to show more. So it starts out with 120 and it has a logarithmic algorithm 1.3. I changed it to 1.8 in my class because of how much they were going, and you can see that it makes level 10 almost unobtainable, but they're all at level 7. So you could play with that logarithmic algorithm and decide where you want your kids to be, and if you do it later, it just redoes their levels, so it's not going to hurt anything, and you can up the number of levels as well. The last thing you can do on these is to change the visual for each level. So each level is going to get a badge, and you can change what the badge looks like just by dropping a picture called 1, a picture called 2, a picture called 3 in there, and you can change what those are. I think that putting pictures in and talking about those different modifications that you can do for a specific class, I'm going to do the visuals and show you how to do that on a separate smaller video so that I can just go ahead and finish this one for you and just do the level up separately. We're really done. Leveling up is the last thing, and after that is actually adding games themselves to Moodle, and I'm going to do that as a separate video as well on the Moodle games that are available to you to play. So I'm going to close out this Tech Tuesday right here. I'll add a little section at the end on the images and names that you can add in the level up thing, and then we'll talk separately about actual games that you can add in Moodle. Thanks for coming.